Bob Catter, who has been the independent member of the seat of Kennedy for a long time now in North Queensland, and is one of the three independents, one of the four independents who will be helping to resolve the fate of the next government. Bob Catter, you can hear me on the phone line?
Yes.
So, Bob, suddenly you find yourself in this position after all these years. Did you see it coming?
Oh, Kerry, I was a very powerful position in the latter years of the Jockey Peterson government, and all week, people have been speculating. I've been out in the campaign trail, and I suppose campaigning is listening to people, the people in the electorate. I really haven't had a picture of what's been happening in the wider world, so I just have to take your word for it.
So tell me this. What are the key principles that will guide you in any negotiations about which party you would back in minority government? What would be the guiding principles?
Yeah, I have said continuously and continuingly that I don't purport to speak for my fellow independents. We're very good friends, we work very well together, and but they must speak for themselves. And we have agreed that we will simply close the door, we'll sit down and have a long conversation with each other, the three of us, and maybe the four of us if there's a fourth one, and we'll come to a conclusion about process, or we hope we will agree to a process by which we would see the government move confidently forward. But you've got to understand that every country on earth, there's no country on earth left with a two-party system. America has a constituency-based system, entirely different. They don't vote along party lines in their parliament called a Congress. We are now moving into what is the situation in the rest of the world. We no longer have a two-party system, and that means that other people's viewpoints, we're not in a two corporate Woolworths and Coles economy. There are other players out there and other viewpoints, and this two corporation politics has led to the demise of rural Australia. We just simply every town in rural Australia is losing population. Every industry is closing down, and that's not exaggeration. I can actually back that up with statistical evidence if you wish me to provide it for you.
So just tell me this. Are you saying that the three of you are likely to operate as a bloc? And it sounds to me as if you would want to have discussions, careful discussions, with at least those other two independents, Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott, before you sit down and have substantial conversations with either of the major parties?
We've already agreed to do that. We've had very extensive discussions before the Parliament rose, because it was a situation that was unfolding in that direction, and we decided that is what we would do. And I think that that's a responsible course of action on our part. But I can't speak for the other independents, but as far as I'm concerned, the gong goes to whoever's going to allow rural Australia to survive. And we've had 12 years of LNP government, smashed us into the ground, and the ALP government in 3 years hasn't restored anything. If anything, things have continued to get worse. Now, all we're asking for is the right to survive, and we most certainly haven't enjoyed that now for probably 20, 25 years.
So in that context, you're not necessarily going to be swayed by issues like one party having one or maybe two seats more than the other, or one party having maybe 1% or 0.5% of the vote more than the other.
Kerry, I think that Tony and Rob and myself would take a whole range of issues into account. But to me, the overwhelming issue is survival for rural Australia.
Okay.
By the quirk of fate or the enlightenment of the democratic system, we have got a position of power, and surely we must exercise that to try and ensure survival for our people, which we haven't enjoyed and we're not enjoying at the present moment. And there are some obvious answers out there to turn that around.
Okay, Bob Catter, look, I appreciate you coming onto the phone to share that with us, and good luck with your deliberations, but thanks very much for talking with us.
Thank you very much, Kerry.
Now, I understand that we've got Tony Windsor standing by. He comes from the seat of New England, which he's also held for some years. He came out of the New South Wales Party. Tony Windsor, I think, was originally a National as well.
Elected as an independent.
But elected as an independent, but I think had some... He'll correct me anyway. Tony Windsor, you can hear me okay?
Yes, Kerry, I can hear.
Good. I don't know whether... Were you able to hear what Bob Catter was saying?
Most of it, and I concur with what I did hear, that I think, we've got to sort of be a little bit cool and examine what's actually going on and allow the process to work a little bit more before we all start running off in different directions. So I think what Bob was telling you, that Rob Oakeshott, Bob and myself would probably get together and just talk about what's in front of us and maybe seek some advice in terms of what could happen in relation to the formation of a government. And I think the key issue here is what do you do to make sure that what's put in place is actually stable in terms of governance for a period of time. Otherwise, we might end up back at the polls.
And, well, that's a very real possibility, of course, but do you agree with Bob Catter that it's not just about an argument of who got the biggest number of seats or the biggest volume of votes, that you will be taking issues into account? Would you also take into account whether Labor has any privilege because Julia Gillard is the sitting current Prime Minister? Does that have any bearing at all?
Oh, well, I wouldn't get into specifics, but obviously a lot of things come into play. But the main thing is that if we go down a pathway, what does it do in terms of the stability of government within the country? And if we can't reach a conclusion to that, well, there are other options. So there's a lot of things that can be considered, but I see it in a very serious vein. I don't think it's a toy to be played with, and but I think it needs to be done in the clear light of day with people actually thinking things through rather than being bought off with various trinkets, etc. So that's the way I'll go down the path of trying to wrestle with it. That's if in fact there is a hung parliament, and I don't think there's any guarantees that that's a fact yet either.
Well, both the Labor and Liberal members of this panel neither can see a way really to government in their own right with 76 seats, so that does certainly seem the likelihood, but it sounds to me as if you will want to sit down with your independent colleagues and have very careful discussions that presumably could take place over several days before you consider talking with either of the major party leaders. Is that the case?
Oh, very much so. Actually, I had a phone call from Julia Gillard earlier tonight just to congratulate me on winning the seat. And there's a message for me to ring Joe Hockey, so I presume Joe would want to be talking about my victory.
Well,
that's why he'd be ringing. But no, I'm quite happy to sit and talk to people. But I think it's got to be done coolly and not rushed, because if people get this wrong, it doesn't only damage a few politicians' career, it can possibly damage the nation. So I'm going to be proceeding slowly rather than jumping to a whole range of conclusions based on a whole range of assumptions. And it may not be my vote that makes any difference at all. There could be scenarios that unfold where others decide for themselves, and that's their right. I'm the member for New England. I haven't been suddenly made the king of New England.
Well, what you may well find is that you've suddenly got a whole raft of new friends, new best friends.
Oh, I'm sure they'll be there. I was in a hung parliament in 1991, and there was an amazing number of friends I had at that time. Quite a lot of them went on holidays in 1995.
Tony Windsor, thanks very much for talking with us. These are incredibly interesting times in Australian political history. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry.
Now, here we are in this wonderful age of sophisticated television, and we're relying on the telephone, and we're going to keep going because we've got Rob Oakeshott on the phone, presumably from Port Macquarie. Rob Oakeshott came into the Parliament in the by-election and then has absolutely cemented his position. Rob Oakeshott, can you hear me?
I can, Kerry, and I'm sorry I can't get a line out, and telecommunications is one of our issues.
Ah, well, a point well made.
We've got a plan for him.
As I just said to Tony Windsor, you're about to have a whole lot of new best friends.
Yeah, well, I hope so. If the topic is telecommunications, we had some trouble getting on late line on Monday night, and I've had some trouble talking to some journalists throughout the week on mobile phones. So you don't need to be Einstein to know one of the issues we'll be talking about over the next week.
This has been an incredible ride for you, really. I mean, talk about a fascinating entree to politics. You haven't been there all that long, have you?
Well, I was in a state parliament for 12 years.
Well, true.
I've done some numbers, and between Bob Catter, Tony Windsor and myself, there's 68 years of public life. So, you know, one of the issues I think we'll be looking for, again, you don't have to be Einstein to realise that we'll be looking for stable representation. And I would hope, through all the murkiness and difficulties of the next week or two, that everyone can put the political party loyalties to one side, and we can work in the greater good of some good outcomes over the next 3 years through the Parliament, and that will mean some people probably parking those loyalties, and hopefully if we can do that, I think this is a stimulus package for democracy. I think this is a really exciting time. It is getting the Parliament back to that real issue and that original concept, which is of the people, by the people, for the people. And so, as difficult it is for those on your panel, I actually think and say, bring it on.
And Andrew Wilkie is a surprise new Member of Parliament, it seems, from Denison as an independent. Andrew Wilkie has come to the Parliament in a different way to yourselves and with a different background to you. He has previously run for the Greens. Would you contemplate bringing him into your tent in the early stages of discussion?
Look, I've got Tony Windsor's and Bob Catter's mobile numbers. I've actually never even talked to or met Adam Brandt or Andrew Wilkie. I'll be looking to do that over the next 24 hours. But realistically, this is an issue for 150 members of Parliament who've got elected tonight. This is not just about 5 people, and I would hope there's commitment from 150 people to get the best outcome for the country over the next week or two. If we can get stable government, regardless in what form, and don't just rule out, don't just make this a red tribe or a blue tribe concept. There are multi-party concepts that we can also consider. Let's think of all the options. Let's focus on the best interests for Australia, a good functioning Parliament, and I think potentially if we can do that, this is a really exciting time for Australia and Australian people.
Now, last question. You started political life as a National Party member and you left that party disillusioned, but nonetheless, that was where your roots were. Do you still feel a connection to the Conservative side of politics in particular?
Oh, look, this has got nothing to do with history. I'm going to walk into any negotiations and any conversations with clean hands and with no wish list other than looking for, as I repeat, stable government and a focus on a Parliament that can deliver outcomes. I think the big message for the 2 major parties that's come out of this Saturday is that the Parliament absolutely underwhelmed Australia over the last 6 months. We saw political party leaders knifed in both parties. We saw policy backflips on both sides, and I think the sentiment that's come out loud and clear today is that is not good enough. And I, Tony, Bob, I hope Adam, I hope Andrew, and I hope the other 145 colleagues, no matter what brand they wear, if we are serious about the job description that we take on when we take on the role of being a Member of Parliament, it is to deliver for the country. Let's overwhelm Australia in the next Parliament, and I hope here's an opportunity to do it.
Rob Oakeshott, thanks very much for talking with us tonight, and again, good luck in the deliberations ahead. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.